So, two very common questions that I get when we're dealing with how to find slope, especially with this formula here. M equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. One, why are we subtracting? Two, why does the 2 come first? Why don't we just stick with number 1 first when that makes sense to do them in order? Well, let's address those. First off, why are we subtracting? Because for slope, I need to find the change in y over the change in x. So we're subtracting because if you think back to when you learned the words for solutions to a subtraction problem, when you're adding something, you get a sum. When you're multiplying something, you get a product. When you're subtracting, you get the difference, right? So if we're finding the difference between this point and this point here, I want to find how much my x changed and how much my y changed. That means I want to find the difference between 2 and 4. Well, how do I do that? 4 minus 2, I went 2 spaces. I want to find the difference between 3 and 6. I can do that by subtracting to say, okay, I went 3 spaces. That's why we are subtracting. So why does y2 come first? The same with x2. Why does the 2 start instead of just starting with 1? Well, I'll give you a secret. It doesn't matter. You can do y1 minus y2 over x2 or x1 minus x2. I almost made the mistake. You can flip them if you want as long as the 1s are in line and the 2s are in line. But why would I want to do 2 first? Why does the formula say to do 2 first? Well, let's try the same 2 points we just looked at. 2 would be the one that comes next when you're moving from left to right. So this is x1, x2, y2. That's the point x2, y2. This is the point x1, y1. So if I take this y value, let's do it how we should first. So y2 is 6 minus y1 is 3 over x2 is 4 minus x1 is 2. So we have 3 over 2. That is a positive 3/2 slope, nice and clean. Now let's do it the other way. Okay, so let's just flop these. So I have 3 minus 6, because that would just flop these positions, and I have to flop these positions too. So 2 minus 4, what does that give me? 3 minus 6, well, that's a negative 3. 2 minus 4, well, that's a negative 2. Well, now I have a negative divided by a negative. What is negative 3 divided by negative 2 is just a positive 3/2. So what's the difference between this and that? Simply that there's one more step here. If I have a positive slope, I'm going to end up with 2 negatives, a negative divided by a negative, which I then have to say, take one more step to say that it's positive. So it worked out as long as I kept this all in line, but it's one more step. That's why we do 2 first, because when you have a positive slope, you won't get a negative divided by a negative, and you are just done right here. What you want to avoid, you cannot do this, what I almost wrote. You cannot do that. That will mess you up. It has to be, if you're starting with the 1s, you have to start with the 1s. If you're starting with the 2s, you have to start with the 2s. Same thing if you do that. You cannot flip the x's. Do not do that. That will not work. All right.